the surface of my anxious imagination beckons a calmness that is found in you alone. It washes over every doubt, every imperfection. Jesus, your presence is a comfort of my soul. There's nowhere I'd rather be when you're singing over me. I just wanna be with you. I'm lost in your mystery. I'm found in your love for me. I just wanna be with you. Here in the waiting, I won't worry about tomorrow. No need to focus on the things I can't control. All my attention on the wonder of this moment. Jesus, your presence is the comfort of my soul. There's nowhere I'd rather be when you're singing over me. I just wanna be with you. I'm lost in your mystery. I'm found in your love for me. I just wanna be with you. So long that I am, because with who you are, all the glory of your presence, what more could I ask for? So long that I am, because with who you There's nowhere I'd rather be when you're singing over me. I just wanna be with you. for me. Ooh, I just wanna be here with you.
Skies spin their dance within your breath, and time runs its race within your head, and my mind runs wild to comprehend what no mind on earth could understand. Your ways are higher, your thoughts are wilder. Love came like madness, poured out in blood-washed romance. It makes no sense, but this is grace. And I know you're with me in this place, here now. Still my heart, let your voice be all I hear now, and fix my eyes on the things that I can't see now. Spirit, breathe like the wind, come have your way, 'cause I know you're in this place. Fate makes a fool of what makes sense, but grace found my heart when logic ends, and my mind runs wild to comprehend. No mind on earth could understand. Your ways are higher, your thoughts are wilder. Love came like madness, poured out in blood-washed romance. It makes no sense, but this is grace. And I know you're with me in this place, here now. Still my heart, let your voice be all I hear now, and fix my eyes on the things that I can't see now. Spirit, breathe like the wind, come out your way, 'cause I know that you are here now. Still my heart, let your voice be all I hear now, and fix my eyes on the things that I can't see now. Spirit, breathe like the wind, come have your way, 'cause I know that you here now and fix my eyes on the things that I can't see now. Spirit, breathe like the wind, come out your way. 'Cause I know you're in this place.
Our relationships depend on self-empowerment and not on enabling others.
The chapter begins with the riddle, how many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? And the answer, of course, is only one, but the light bulb has to really want to change. And why do we begin there? Because we all have people in our lives who are doing things we wish they wouldn't do, or they're not doing things we wish they would do. I mean, every parent can certainly attest to that, and pretty much 99% of spouses. But what do we do as humans when we can't seem to get somebody to do what we would like them to do? And the answer to that is we have a variety of different manipulative behaviors that are designed to affect the change we're looking for. For instance, we could beg, plead, yell, scold, lecture, do unfavorable comparisons. You know, Harry's wife would have done that. I just want you to, you know, we can do the silent treatment. We could leave literature. We could withhold affection. You know, there are so many things humans will do. And do they work? The answer is at best temporarily. But it's better than admitting to self that I have no power to change another person's behavior. I mean, I can contribute to changes, I can influence perhaps, but people, again, they have to choose to make changes. I mean, I'm in the business of helping people change, and I often realize how impotent I am. If somebody doesn't want to move off the square they're on, they're not going anywhere, no matter what brilliant insight I might try to share with them. Right. And so this truth is about, since I know I don't have the power to change you, I do have the power, and we give 4 steps of empowering self, to do something that is within my scope, within my control.
Thanks for tuning in today, and we are in the series called Remind. This is week 7 that we're in this series. We're kind of patterning this after some teachings from Dr. Chris Cortman's book. He's a doctor of psychology in Venice, and the book is Your Mind and Owner's Manual for a Better Life. And if you want to buy this book, you can. It's on Amazon, available to you, but just using this as the springboard for a lot of things that we're talking about in this mental health series. And over these 10 weeks, we're going to be examining how we can become aware of those things that will help us with our mental health in the midst of a world that is ever changing. And today, with our circumstance, now more than ever, I think it's good for us to do some introspection and find out how we are feeling about so many different things. So we've gone through the weeks. Let me just summarize some of those. We talked about emotions, how they don't just show up. There are reasons for emotions. We talked about how you can change your compulsive behaviors. We talked about that behaviors have some underlying purpose. The week before, we talked about the saboteur, the fact that we sabotage ourselves too often unless we confront this side of us that tries to derail us. And then week 5, all behavior. It doesn't just happen. Behavior requires permission. So we must learn what we're permitting ourselves to do. Last week, we talked about how emotional energy is finite. It needs to be invested, but it can be wasted through wishing, through worrying, and through whining. We waste energy when we fixate, wishing things were different, that we'd done something different in the past. We waste energy when we continually worry about the future. We waste energy in the present when we whine about the things we can't change. That was last week. And if you want to watch all these, you can go online. They're on the YouTube channel with Suncoast, and you can check them all out. And if you've missed one, you can catch up with anyone that you need. But today we're looking at the 7th truth, and here's the truth for us. Our relationships depend on self-empowerment and not on enabling others. I want to let this sink in a little bit. Our relationships depend on self-empowerment and not on enabling others. The foundation for a strong relationship with others can be seen in the teachings of Jesus. I love to look at what Jesus has to say, particularly in John, when he's talking to his disciples. And he says in John 13, love one another as I've loved you. After he washed their feet, he said, let this be an example to you. Also in these chapters, chapter 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17 of John, a lot of what Jesus has to say is to his disciples and to us. But he really conveys his love for the world. And these chapters culminate in chapter 17, where the prayer of Jesus shows his love for all his disciples. So let me pull out a couple of those verses. In John 13, 8, Philip says, Jesus, show us the Father, and that will be enough. And his response is amazing. Jesus says to Philip, Philip, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. And then in John 14, verses 19 and 20, he says, before long, the world will see me no more. He could see what's coming down the road. But you will see me. Because I live, you also will live. On that day, you'll realize that I'm in the Father and that you are in me. And most importantly, I am in you. So here's the truth. Jesus taught his disciples about the essence of his life mingled with theirs. It's not a life of enablement, but it's a life of empowerment. A life of enablement simply says, give me, so I don't have to work for it. And sometimes in the church world, I've lived through some of these thoughts to where, it's not by works, but it's by faith. Everything you get's by faith, it's by grace, it's this whole gift of God, and I understand that. But empowerment versus enablement, which is the better? Empowerment is the better gift. Enablement says, hey, you're hungry, here's a fish. Empowerment says, I'll teach you how to fish. Enablement says, let's come with the 5,000, as we see in the Gospels. We're ready to be fed. They were hungry. Enablement says, come for a free lunch. Empowerment is when Jesus looks at his disciples and says, you give them something to eat. See, in our world today, there's this concept, toxic charity, and there's a book written with that title. And toxic charity is all about the principle of enablement, not empowerment. And we read this as a staff, we practice it. I'm going to talk more about this later, but when we help people and they become dependent upon us, then we've not truly helped them. And during this pandemic, we paid someone's electric bill, and that's a different scenario. As a matter of fact, a lot of what we're doing now is not a normal scenario because people are having needs that have never been met before, have never been had before, and they've never asked for anything before. But there's some people, those who are experiencing enabling, they want, if you help them with their power bill this month, they want help next month and the next month. And before long, they just soon have the power bill shipped to you so they don't have to pay it or see it. That's enabling. We shouldn't take care of that kind of thing. When we help people and they become dependent on us, we've not truly helped them. We're going to talk more about that next week. Today, I want to look at the insights of this week. And there are just several I want to share with you. And here's the first one. It has to do with behavior. Manipulative behaviors work in the short term to help with a problem, but do not change a person or address the underlying condition. As long as our behaviors alleviate short-term suffering, and as long as they do, they'll be repeated. For example, what's a short-term behavior that gets something done? Shouting. If you have kids, you know that's true. All of a sudden your kids are doing something and they're not paying attention, and all of a sudden you shout at them and you get their attention, and all of a sudden they begin to obey you, even though it may not be forever, but at least it's temporary. Another temporary behavior. When we use fear, when we make someone afraid, we can often get them to change. You don't want to go out there because it's dark, and you don't what lives in the dark. Okay, I'll come inside. You put fear in them. But fear is often just temporary as a motivator. You've heard this expression, there's no atheist in foxholes. Why? Because the fear, the next bomb could drop in the foxhole. We want to make sure that it's not us. I love the movie, it's been out years. I think it's called The End by Burt Reynolds. It's a classic movie. You may not have seen it, but you can go back and watch it. I think it's a 1978 movie, but here's the premise of the movie. Burt Reynolds is the main actor in it. He has a terminal blood disease. And this blood disease the prognosis, you're going to die a slow and painful death. And he says, I don't want to die that way. I'd rather not die that way. And after he tries to kill himself, he's put in some psycho ward, and he makes a deal with Dom DeLuise, who's a crazy guy trying to kill him throughout the rest of the movie. But he wants to die. He doesn't want to die a slow, painful death. I just want to die. And the whole movie is about him wanting to die. Finally, he swims out in the ocean, a mile or so. And he finally gets out to where I'm so tired, I'm out here, and he takes a deep breath, and he goes underwater, and he's going to drown. And as he's underwater for about a minute, all of a sudden something clicks in his brain, and he comes back out of the water, shooting out of the water with this expression, I want to live. I want to live. And he looks, and he's so far from shore, and he's exhausted, so he starts swimming. He says, oh God, if you help me, I will go to church every week, and I'll give you 50% of my income. And he's swimming, and as he gets about a half mile in, oh God, if you'll help me, I'll go to church once a month, and I'll give you 25% of my income. And as he gets within a quarter, oh God, I'll come to church occasionally, but I'll give you 10%. And he finally as he progresses to shore, the fear diminishes and his behavior shifts. I mean, it's amazing how that works. The more fear in our life, the more we promise. The promises based on fear are often shallow and temporary. I grew up in a church that used fear as a tactic to get people right with God or to get them saved. Fear of hell, fear of eternal punishment, fear that, hey, Jesus is going to come again and I'm going to be left behind. But I need to suggest to you, fear is not the basis of good long-term mental health, and it's not the basis of a long-term connection and relationship with God. Which leads me to a second thought today. We need to learn and follow the 4 self-empowerment tactics, and I'm going to give them to you. But when we follow these steps, we will discover that the other person will be more likely to be responsive to our needs, more aware of his or her issues, and more motivated to change in a positive way. So I've got someone in my life, I want to build a strong relationship. How do I become less enabling and more self-empowering? Let me give you the first possibility. I need to express my feelings appropriately. We need to begin to think in different terms, and I want to call these I statements. I feel hurt when you call me worthless. I feel hurt when you devalue me in front of others. I feel hurt and embarrassed when we're late all the time because of what you do. I feel hurt and frightened for your safety when you drive when you've been drinking. See, those are I statements. This is the way I feel, and sometimes it helps people understand, I didn't realize I made you feel that way. I'm so sorry. I didn't understand that. But here's what we normally say. We normally don't use I statements. Well, we use these kind of statements. You're a liar. You're a bum. You're just as lazy as your brother or your dad. I mean, here we go again. You're just like A, B, or C. See, enabling others to have power over us is removed when we choose a long-term strategy versus these short-term blame statements. Getting angry is not a permanent resolve, but it may open the door for something more permanent, like using I statements. It makes me feel this way. And sometimes people say, I had no idea that it did so much damage to you. Thanks for sharing that with me. And sometimes behaviors can change, not that I changed them, but they decide they changed because they want to stay in relationship. Which leads to a second tactic, and it's this: make a specific request. So I need to express my feelings appropriately, say this is the way it makes me feel. Secondly, I need to be very specific. Dr. Cortman makes an excellent point here. Instead of issuing threats or demands, try to be specific about a request. For example, when you drive under the influence, it makes me feel hurt, worried, or not valued. Please take an Uber next time. You know, it's not about the drinking as much as it's about safety. Or when you call me bad names, it devalues me. Please don't use those kind of names when you talk to me. And something you shouldn't say. Don't say, you always say this, you always do that. Be specific as you can. Make specific requests. And the next one is this: set boundaries for myself. With this, I think Dr. Cortman makes an excellent point in this video clip.
You know, there's a true story, and I'm half ashamed to tell it, but there used to be a video store where you go and you rent movies, you know, a Blockbuster kind of thing. But this was a mom and pop shop. And I went in there one time and they were excited. I'm a new customer. I rented a couple of movies. And I brought them back a day late because I was kind of like tired and I didn't want to go back. And they go, well, it's a $2 late charge, but you're a new customer and, you know, we're going to waive that. And so I rented 2 more. And then I thought, on the day it was due, I just don't feel like going. And they didn't charge me last time. So I went in the next day, and again, I was a day late, and they said the same thing. They said, well, you know, you're a day late. We should charge you $2 a movie, but they didn't. And now it was on. I'm thinking, how long can I get away with this? And the third time I did it again, and this time I really knew exactly what I was doing. And they said to me, you know what, it's $2 a day and you owe us an extra $4. And I wanted to high five them and say, good job. Because otherwise you're enabling me to take advantage of the system. And even knowing what I was doing and even knowing it was wrong, it was like I felt like I wanted to keep this game alive until they brought the boundary down. They said, no, you owe $4.
Wow. That's a good story. I mean, and that shows the possibility of enabling people to do and reinforcing negative behavior.
Yeah.
Without setting some boundaries.
One of the things we look at in that truth that is, I think, really helpful to people is what's the difference between enabling and helping? I mean, I want to help people. I love my family and I want to help them. And so there's a quick statement that I'll make to people that you know, it's helpful, I think, to a lot of people. It says, if someone is doing everything they possibly can for themselves and you assist them, pretty good chance that you're helping. If you're doing things that they could or should be doing for themselves, you're probably enabling them.
I love when he says there's a late fee. And you get away with the late fee the first time, you get away with the late fee the second time, but the last time, the third time, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to pay this time. And sometimes we're incensed, well, I got away with it before, I know, but there is a boundary. And we need to set boundaries for ourselves, if not other people will set boundaries for us. For example, one of the jokes I have with a good close friend of mine, he loves to smoke cigars. And one day I was picking him up to go somewhere, and he had a cigar in his hand. He started getting in my car with a cigar. And I said, oh no, you can smoke that cigar anywhere, but you cannot smoke it in my car. Fussed around a little bit, but I set a boundary. Why don't I want you to get in my car with a cigar? Because you can't smell if you smoke a cigar that much as he does. And secondly, I'll be living with it for days, and I just don't want it. I mean, I said the same thing when my dad would come to my house. My dad was a smoker. Dad, I love you, but please go outside to smoke, because we have to live with the smoke smell. And so sometimes we set boundaries, and we need to set boundaries for ourselves. If I let him get in my car smoking that cigar, then I'm fussing about it for days because I didn't have enough boundaries in my own life. Or if I let them do that, I'm frustrated. Alleviate the frustration, set the boundaries where they need to be. I think that's important. So I talked to a friend of mine, and I've told this story before, but just talked to him again about this millennial employee. And this is a good worker, he's a good kid, got a good heart, and he works hard, and he's very skilled labor. But he said to me, he is late all the time to work. I mean, he's just late all the time. He said, finally one day I got frustrated with him, and I said, hey, let's call his name John, that's not his name. He said, John, you've been late to work 3 times this week. Do you know what that means? And John said, it's Wednesday? I mean, there's no consequence. It's Wednesday. I'm going to be late every day. And here's my point to my friend. If it doesn't bother you, it surely isn't bothering him. And if there's no teeth in it, maybe he'll always be late. Boundaries without consequences are not really boundaries. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that next week, which leads to the next tactic, and it's this. I need to take proper care of myself. Although I cannot change control, or cure another person. I need to take care of myself. Issuing empty warnings, just like I talked about, just creates more stress. We can't control other people, but we can take steps to keep them out of our car if they're smoking a cigar, or if we can take steps to help them if they're late every day. For example, if someone yells at you, you may not be able to control that, but you can leave the room. If someone hits you or assaults you, physically assaults you, you may not do anything before the fact, but you can call the police. And taking care of me helps me gain self-respect. There's certain things that we should not put up with. And when we accept poor behavior, when we accept verbal abuse, physical abuse, insults, and we do that without any consequence, we just continue to enable that kind of behavior. And if you want to know more about this, you can go to Al-Anon and see all about that. It's all about Al-Anon's concept of good mental health. But if you know what's expected, and if you've shared what's expected, if you've shared the rewards or consequences, if you do this, I'm going to do that. If you talk to me that way, I'm not going to be in the room. If you strike me, you're going to be arrested. If you do this, then there's going to be consequences. I may not be able to control you directly, but I can tell you what I will not put up with, and that lack of enabling and that sense of self-empowerment may help you understand if you're going to be with me, you're going to act in a better way. You're going to behave in a different manner. Which leads me to the last thought of the day, and it's this, the last insight. Enabling is often confused as helping. We help a lot of people at Suncoast. We do. We try to help a lot of people, and sometimes it's very possible for us to get and fall into the side of enabling. We work not to be there. It's a conscious decision to help people without enabling them. If we're doing something for someone that he or she should be doing for themselves, it's probably enabling. It's a story of a young man who was gallivanting through Europe. He was enjoying his newfound freedom from his parents, young adult. He was at a great time. He spent weeks traveling, gallivanting around Europe, and he was running out of money. When he saw his resources were very low, and all of a sudden they were almost dried up, he had to act quickly. And back in that day, he sent a telegram to his mom. And the telegram really was 3 words, just 3. Mom, starving, Philip. And he said, that'll get some resource. I know my mom, and she always wants me to eat. Mom, starving, Philip. She got the telegram, and she thought about it for an entire day before she sent the response. And her response was 3 words, Philip, starve, Mom. I mean, there's the consequences. You know, you go gallivanting around Europe, you take a sense of responsibility. I'm not going to enable you. I'm going to empower you to figure out a way to keep from starving on your own. It's difficult, but it's an important way for us to grow up. If a person is doing all that he or she can do and still needs assistance, you probably are helping. True helpers feel good about helping. Enablers often feel resentful to the people they're helping. Helpers believe that if they need help, since they've given it, there's some reciprocal. Since I give it, I probably can get it. Enablers believe that giving is always a one-way street. If I'm working harder on someone else's life than they are, I'm probably enabling. Here's what I want you to hear me very clearly. Too often, we cannot change people. We can scare them. We can maybe force them into a short-term change, but not a true change. Sometimes it works better than others, but I will suggest to you it doesn't work in the long haul. And since I cannot change others, any change that takes place has to be in me. That's God's specialty. Change in me. Can I pray for you? Father, thanks for the teaching today. We pray that it would be applied to our lives. Thank you for hope. During this time of pandemic, we are people of hope. The world is changing, and so are we. Help us to be so empowered that we can help people become a better version of themselves. Indirectly, by your goodness and grace, we pray. In Christ's name, amen. Well, thanks for watching this week. I want to close this with a story. I've told this story before, but it's worth repeating. There's a national pastor who had 6 kids. his wonderful wife, successful life in ministry. And there's one thing that drove him absolutely crazy, his wife being late continually. One day, after all the kids, 6 kids, they're all dressed, they're in the car, and this father slash pastor slash husband was waiting on his wife again. He was stressed, he was annoyed, and he was mumbling. And this is what he was mumbling. I can't believe she's going to make us late. This is ridiculous. Here we go again. I'm so frustrated. And after hearing all this complaining, one of his kids asked him, Dad, is Mom worth the wait? He said, oh man. Out of the mouth of children. He said, that cut me. And I realized all my mumbling, all my complaining. He said, that moment the light came on. He said, I looked at my kid, I said, of course she's worth it. I love your mom with all my heart. But it's about value and worth. Is she worth it? Here's the question you may be asking today. Am I worth it? God's answer to that is absolutely. I'm just here to proclaim what I believe with all my heart. He loves you today, and so do I. Thanks for watching.